What happens when the founder of a nationwide transport company boards one of his own buses undercover and sees a driver charge passengers double just because they don't speak English? Bryson Zeller had built his bus company from scratch, just one van, a handful of routes, and a dream to offer affordable, clean transportation across 20 cities. Now, 20 years later, his buses were everywhere air-conditioned, Wi-Fi enabled, and known for being cheap and reliable. But lately, something felt off. Complaints were up. Not the usual stuff like late arrivals or broken AC, those he could handle. These were different. Vague reviews about feeling ignored, mistreated, or tricked. But when Bryson asked his district managers for specifics, all he got were excuses. "It's probably just entitled passengers," one said. "Drivers are doing their best," said another. But Bryson had learned long ago, if you wanted the truth, you had to go get it. So he shaved his beard, dyed his hair, wore cheap sneakers and a faded hoodie, and gave himself a new name: Ray. He picked a location in Bakersfield, California, one of the newer hubs with a rotating staff. Corporate hadn't introduced him to anyone there yet. He'd blend in. No one would know who he really was. He bought a one-way ticket to Fresno at the Bakersfield terminal, making sure to show up early and sit in the waiting area like any other passenger. The bus was scheduled to leave in 30 minutes. The line at the ticket counter was slow. An older woman in a red shawl stepped up next. She looked nervous, holding out a crumpled $20 bill and pointing at a paper with an address. The driver at the counter, a tall man with buzzed hair and sunglasses perched on his head, didn't even glance at the paper. $40, he said flatly. The woman frowned. No. 20? She said, pointing at the printed schedule taped to the glass. That's old, the man replied. Prices changed last week. Bryson's brows furrowed. The woman looked confused, helpless. Behind her, a younger man with a thick accent tried to ask something. Is this same bus go Fresno? 50, the driver said, cutting him off. Bryson stepped forward. Wait, 50? My ticket was 25. The driver looked him over. Then you got lucky. Prices change. You gonna pay or not? He snapped at the others. Bryson backed off, pretending to be just another passenger, but inside, something twisted in his gut. He watched as the woman gave up and slowly pulled out another bill. Her hands trembled. Once on the bus, Bryson sat near the front, close enough to hear the driver talk. Man, the driver muttered to another passenger. These people don't even know what they're paying for. You think I get paid enough to deal with that crap? The bus rolled out of the terminal. Bryson stared out the window, jaw tight. He'd seen enough to know the man's game. Guess who doesn't speak English, charge them double, pocket the extra. And no one at corporate had caught it? He glanced around the bus. An older woman wiped her eyes. The man with the accent sat silently, clutching his backpack. Bryson felt sick. He'd built this company to help people. Give them a better way to get where they needed to go. But now, this wasn't just bad service. It was theft. It was discrimination. And it was happening under his name. He needed to see more. He pulled out a notepad and wrote down everything: the driver's name tag, the time, the route. Then he leaned back in his seat, listening, watching. If this was happening here, how many other places was it happening to? He wasn't just going to find out. He was going to end it. The bus pulled into the Fresno terminal just after noon. Bryson waited until the last passenger stepped off before he followed. The driver didn't glance at him, too busy pulling a wad of cash from his pocket and shoving it into his jacket, money that clearly didn't come from the official till. Bryson looked away and stepped onto the platform. He didn't approach anyone. Not yet. No one here knew who he really was, and he intended to keep it that way a little longer. Instead, he slipped into a corner of the terminal and pulled out his phone. He sent a message to his executive assistant. Need employee roster for Bakersfield Terminal. All current drivers. No questions. Then he boarded a return bus, this time under a different driver. The ride back to Bakersfield was quiet, uneventful. The woman behind the wheel was focused, polite, and followed protocol. That only confirmed what he already suspected: it wasn't the whole system that was broken. But there were cracks. And those cracks were being exploited. Back in Bakersfield, he didn't leave the terminal. Instead, he bought another ticket for the next morning and walked to a budget motel 2 blocks away. He needed to stay close, and he needed to see how things looked from the inside. Not just one ride, he needed days. The next morning, he returned early and loitered near the employee entrance. A young woman in a faded vest and khakis walked past him, adjusting her headset. "Dispatch?" she called into a walkie clipped to her hip. "Bus 19's rear door sensors acting up again." "Just tape it shut," came the response. Bryson stepped closer. "That a common fix?" She glanced at him, then nodded slowly. "Unless you want to wait 2 weeks for maintenance." "Who are you?" "New hire." He lied easily. "Name's Ray." She studied him. "You look corporate." "Yeah? You look like you haven't slept in a week." That earned him a dry laugh. "Touché. I'm Gina. Terminal operations." "You training for driver or terminal?" "Driver." "Then you're mine today." She led him inside and tossed him a neon vest. "You'll shadow Jamal. Bus 24. Leaves in 20. Bryson followed, falling into step beside her. "Busy day?" "Always," she muttered. "We're short 2 drivers, and 1 called out." "So guess who's running dispatch, inspections, and customer service?" He didn't answer. She didn't wait for one. Jamal's bus was parked in the far corner. The man himself leaned against the open door, sipping something from a thermos. Mid-30s, lean build, calm expression. "This your trainee?" Gina said. Jamal looked him over, nodded once. "Just don't talk over me when I'm greeting folks, and we'll be good." The route was local 6 stops between Bakersfield and Delano. A mix of regulars and new faces boarded. Jamal greeted each one with a nod or a short word. He checked IDs when needed, explained transfers when asked. Efficient, respectful. 2 hours in, Bryson leaned closer. "How long you been with the company?" 4 years. Started part-time. Went full-time last year. You like it? There was a pause. "I like driving," Jamal said. "Companies. Okay. Depends who's running your terminal." Gina seems solid. She is. She's also drowning. They keep promising her more staff. Never comes. Bryson nodded slowly. That tracked. At stop 4, a man with a limp and a duffel bag struggled to board. Jamal cut the engine, stepped out, and helped him on. No complaints. No eye rolls. Just action. Bryson made a mental note. That evening, back at the motel, he reviewed everything he'd seen. Jamal was the kind of employee the company needed more of, quietly dependable, underappreciated. Gina was holding a sinking ship together with duct tape and willpower. But that wasn't what disturbed him most. What haunted him was the moment he overheard at the lunch window. He hadn't planned to eat there. But he needed to stay close, blend in. The terminal had a tiny built-in diner, 3 stools, greasy counter, 2 overworked staff. Bryson sat at the end, keeping his head down. Then 2 drivers entered. One of them he recognized. The same one from yesterday. Name tag. Cole. The other was broader, heavier, with a distinct tattoo on his neck. "Man, I had this lady today," Cole said, dropping onto a stool. "Didn't understand a word I said. Tried to pay in coins. I told her it was cash only, she starts crying." Tattoo laughed. "You get anything off her?" 15. She had no clue. "I told her it was a baggage fee." "You still splitting it with me from Thursday?" Cole hesitated. "You weren't even on that route." "We agreed. You send them to me on the transfer, I keep it going." "That's the deal." They went quiet as the cook approached. Bryson stared at the cracked countertop. His hands were clenched in his lap. He left without finishing his meal. Later that night, he finally got the roster from his assistant. Cole's full name, employment history, disciplinary record clean, which told him more than he liked. If a guy like that hadn't been flagged, what else was being missed? The next morning, he showed up early again. This time, he walked straight into Gina's office. She looked up from behind a stack of printed schedules and service logs. Ray, right? You're not on the schedule today. I need a favor. She raised an eyebrow. I want to ride with Cole. She hesitated. Why? I heard he's fast. Want to see how he handles a rush route. She didn't answer immediately. Then she picked up a clipboard. He's on the 11:15 to Visalia. You sure? Yeah. She scribbled something and handed it over. Just listen. Don't get in his way. Bryson nodded and left. Cole's bus was already idling when he arrived. He boarded silently, taking a seat near the middle. Cole didn't acknowledge him. Just stared at his phone until departure time. Then came the pattern. A man with a suitcase stepped up. Is this the one for Visalia? Cole didn't look up. 40. The man blinked. The board says 24. Then go check the board. The man reluctantly handed over 2 20s. No receipt. Next, a young woman with a toddler. Do kids ride free? Not unless they're in a stroller. They are. Then it's 20 for you, 5 for him. Bryson stood. Hey. You got a fare list? Cole turned slowly. You got a problem? You're charging people whatever you feel like. That's not company policy. Cole narrowed his eyes. You just a trainee. Sit down. Bryson stepped closer. Name's not Ray. It's Bryson Zeller. Cole blinked, confused. What? I own this company. The silence on the bus was instant. The passengers froze. Cole's face drained of color. Bryson turned to the front. Everyone who paid more than the listed fare, raise your hand. 3 hands went up. You'll all be refunded in full, he said. Then turned back to Cole. And you're done. Hand me the keys. Cole didn't move. I said now. The man dropped them into Bryson's outstretched palm, then stepped off the bus without a word. Bryson reached for his phone and called Gina. Shut down Route 27. Cole's out. We'll need coverage from Fresno if you're short. Understood, she said quietly. He hung up and turned to the passengers. I apologize for what you experienced. This isn't who we are. You'll all ride free today. He took the driver's seat himself and started the engine. As the bus pulled out of the terminal, he caught a glimpse of Gina through the window, standing by the office door, watching. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. He'd seen enough to know the problem wasn't just one man. It was the silence that let men like him operate. And that silence was about to break. Bryson returned to the Bakersfield terminal before sunrise the following day. He didn't bring a disguise. No hoodie, no fake name. Word would travel fast after yesterday's reveal, and he wanted to see how people acted when they knew the owner was watching, not just hiding behind a title, but right there, in the building. He wore a plain button-up and jeans, nothing flashy, and walked through the employee entrance without a word. Gina was already inside, hunched over the driver assignment board with a half-eaten protein bar in one hand and a dry erase marker in the other. She didn't look up when he stepped in. You're early, she said. Cole's locker's already been cleared. I had night staff do it. I appreciate it, Bryson replied. Did you get backup from Fresno? They sent one driver. That covers the Visalia route barely. Still too short. I'm working on that, he said. But I need to talk to your full-time staff. All of them. Not a group meeting one by one. Gina finally looked up. Her eyes were tired but alert. You planning to grill them? No. I'm planning to listen. She nodded once, then reached for a folder under the desk. Here's your list. Before he left the office, she added, You're gonna find more than just undercharging. There's stuff we've been flagging for months. It just doesn't go anywhere. Bryson paused in the doorway. Why didn't you escalate it? I did. It didn't stick. He met her eyes. It will now. The first driver on the list was Jamal. He showed up 10 minutes early for his shift, same calm presence as before. Bryson met him by the maintenance bay. I owe you a conversation, Bryson said. Jamal raised an eyebrow. About what? About how much you've been holding together without being asked. Jamal shrugged once, but didn't deflect. It's not complicated. You treat people fair, they ride with peace. You don't? They remember. No one ever trained you on how to deal with fair disputes? Nope. We get a laminated sheet with prices, but half the time it's outdated. Gina tries to keep things straight, but she doesn't have the staff to check every route. Bryson folded his arms. Anyone ever ask you to look the other way? Jamal didn't hesitate. Yeah. Once. Guy told me if I skipped ticket checks on the late run, I'd make it home faster. I didn't take it. Who? Already gone. Quit last December. Bryson nodded. You want to move into route lead? We're restructuring leadership here. I need someone drivers trust. You serious? I don't offer things I don't mean. Jamal gave a single nod. Then I'm in. Bryson moved through the rest of the list, a rotating mix of full-timers and long-haul relief drivers. Most were honest, tired, and stuck in a loop of broken communication. One driver, a woman named Letitia, had been logging overtime hours for 6 months straight. They keep scheduling me for routes no one wants, she said. I've asked to be rotated out. They say Fresno's short, so I have to stay. You ever report that to HR? 3 times. Last one got closed without a callback. Bryson leaned forward. You're off rotation for the next 3 days. Paid. And I'm sending someone from corporate to audit the route schedules. Letitia blinked. You're actually doing that? Yes. She nodded slowly, then looked down at her hands. Appreciate it. But not every conversation went that way. An hour later, he sat down across from a driver named Marcus. Late 30s, muscular build, mirrored sunglasses perched on his head even in the break room. He slouched in the chair, arms crossed. Marcus, Bryson began. You've had 5 passenger complaints in the past 2 months. All different routes. All describing the same thing, raised voice, refusing to help with baggage, skipping stops. People lie, Marcus said flatly. Every single one? They see a black man with authority, they get nervous. Bryson didn't flinch. That's not what any of them said. Marcus leaned forward. You ever try driving the Tulare route with 3 screaming kids and 1 AC unit? You'd lose your patience too. Bryson kept his voice even. That's not what this is about. You told a woman to get her kid under control or get off your bus. That's what I'm talking about. Marcus leaned back, jaw tight. She was letting that kid stomp on the seats. I asked twice, then I snapped. So what? You don't get to snap at passengers. You work for them. You don't get to humiliate people because you're tired. Then get me a co-driver, Marcus said. Or better buses. Don't come down on me with corporate speeches. Bryson stood. You're off the schedule. Effective immediately. Marcus shot up. You serious? You're done here. After 1 mistake? No. After 5 that you refused to take responsibility for. Bryson walked out. He didn't look back. By late afternoon, word had spread throughout the terminal. Some staff avoided him. Others approached him quietly, not to complain, but to ask if things were really changing. A janitor, probably in his 60s, approached him near the vending machines. You the one who fired Cole? Yes. The man nodded. Good. Been watching that mess for 2 years. Figured no one up top cared. I care, Bryson said. Then don't stop at him. He didn't. At 5:30, Bryson asked Gina to gather the remaining operational staff in the garage. No managers. Just drivers, dispatch, support, and maintenance. They stood in a loose circle, some holding coffee, others with arms folded. No one spoke. Bryson stepped into the middle. I built this company to serve people with dignity. That includes every one of you. Quiet. I've been hearing stories, some good, some unacceptable. If someone's using this company to exploit passengers or mistreat coworkers, they're gone. That's not a warning. That's a fact. A few heads nodded. I'm not here to make a speech. I'm here to tell you what's changing. He pulled a folded paper from his back pocket. Starting next week, we're launching a direct reporting line to my office. No middlemen. If something's wrong, pay, route assignments, harassment, I want to hear it. Someone in the back muttered something. Bryson turned. You got a comment? A woman in a reflective vest stepped forward. We've heard promises before. I know, Bryson said. And I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to watch. He held her gaze. She didn't look away. I'm not fixing everything in a day. But I'm done letting people like Cole define who we are. He paused. Anyone who wants to be part of what we're rebuilding, stay. Anyone who doesn't know hard feelings. But don't get in the way. No one moved. Bryson nodded once, then stepped back. Later that night, he returned to his motel room. He didn't turn on the TV. Just sat at the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Not out of exhaustion, but because he finally understood how far things had drifted. He'd built something big. Big enough to hide rot. But he wasn't going to delegate the cleanup. Not anymore. The following Monday, Bryson flew back to headquarters. Not to return to routine, but to dismantle it. He walked into the executive floor without greeting anyone, bypassed his own office, and stepped into the glass conference room where the regional leadership team had just begun their weekly meeting. 10 faces turned toward him. Some surprised. Others uneasy. Don't stop on my account, he said. I'm not here to listen. I'm here to speak. Bryson closed the door behind him and set a folder on the table. This is a list of every report that should have reached my desk and didn't. Fare manipulation. Passenger discrimination. Schedule manipulations. HR complaints that never got responses. All of it buried somewhere between terminals and this floor. A senior VP in a gray suit leaned back. We've been addressing the staffing issues, Bryson. The situation's not as simple as, I'm not talking about staffing. Bryson interrupted. I'm talking about enabling theft and mistreatment by ignoring reports from the field. I went undercover last week. I saw a driver extorting passengers who didn't speak English. I saw a dispatcher being told to tape a malfunctioning door shut. And I saw honest employees working 12-hour days without recognition or support. The room was still. He looked directly at the VP. You're terminated. Effective immediately. The man's jaw tightened. You can't be serious. Bryson didn't blink. You ignored flagged reports from Bakersfield and Fresno for 6 months. You handled escalations like they were suggestions. Get your things. The VP stood, red-faced but silent, and left. Bryson turned to the others. If you've buried complaints to keep metrics clean, start cleaning out your desks. If you've passed blame to field staff instead of fixing broken systems, same thing. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm demanding accountability. He left the room without waiting for a response. Back in his office, he pulled up the dispatch logs from every California terminal. Over the next 2 hours, he flagged every pattern of excessive overtime, route overlap, and terminal shortages. Then he picked up the phone. Get me a meeting with HR and scheduling leads. In person. Today. That afternoon, a new policy was signed into effect. No driver could be booked for more than 6 consecutive days without a mandatory 2-day reset. Route assignments would be audited weekly by a rotating logistics team, not regional managers. And all passenger fare disputes would be reviewed by a centralized compliance group with full authority to investigate and remove personnel. The next morning, Bryson flew back to Bakersfield. When he entered the terminal, Gina was at the front desk, running check-ins herself. Her voice was hoarse, but steady. "Didn't expect you back this soon," she said. "I brought someone with me." Behind him, a woman in a navy blazer followed in. Late 40s, sharp-eyed, weathered but composed. "This is Miriam. She's the new compliance lead. She reports directly to me." Gina nodded slowly. "She'll be sitting in on operations for the next month. Watching, not interfering. If anyone has a complaint, she logs it." No filters. Miriam stepped forward. "I'm not here to micromanage. I'm here to document. If something's broken, I'll see it." That afternoon, Bryson called a closed-door meeting with the Bakersfield night shift, the ones who rarely saw corporate, never got updates, and were often blamed for things that went wrong during the day. They filed into the break room cautiously, still in reflective vests and stained boots. Bryson stood by the whiteboard with a dry erase marker in hand. "Here's the deal," he said. "I'm not here to ask how you feel. I'm here to ask what needs to change. I'll write it down. Every item. If I can't fix it this week, I'll tell you why. But nothing leaves this board unacknowledged." A man in his 50s with oil-streaked sleeves raised a hand. "Half the night buses come in with empty first aid kits. We're supposed to check them, but they're already missing supplies." Bryson wrote, "Restock failure first aid." A woman near the sink said, "We don't get meal breaks. We just eat standing up between calls." He wrote, "No scheduled breaks night dispatch." Someone else said, "Garbage pickups only once a week. We're hauling trash bags out ourselves." More followed. Broken intercoms. Unread maintenance logs. A route that passed through an unlit lot with no emergency contact nearby. By the time the session ended, the board was full. "No one's getting written up for anything you said here," Bryson told them. "You're not the problem. You're the one staying late to patch it." He stayed after the meeting ended, erasing each item from the board only after adding it to a shared document with Gina and Miriam. Later that week, a new maintenance coordinator was flown in from Sacramento. A second dispatcher was added to the night shift, allowing scheduled breaks. A mobile safety team was assigned to monitor the lot in question. None of it fixed everything. But it started something real. On Friday afternoon, Bryson walked into the garage where Jamal was finishing a post-trip inspection. "Got a minute?" Bryson asked. Jamal stepped back from the engine. "Yeah. How's the new lead role treating you?" "Lot more paperwork than I thought. But it's good. People talk more now. They're not as quiet when something's off." Bryson nodded. "That's the point." Jamal wiped his hands on a rag. "You staying long?" "Just through tomorrow. Then I'm visiting the San Bernardino terminal." Jamal looked at him for a moment. "Don't take this the wrong way, but people didn't think you'd actually show up out here. Let alone fire someone." Bryson leaned against the side of the bus. "That's fair. I think people want to believe in the company again," Jamal said. "But they're gonna need to see this kind of thing keep happening. Not just when there's a scandal." "It will," Bryson said. "I'm not going back to running this place from spreadsheets." Jamal nodded once, then turned back to the engine. That evening, Bryson held one final meeting in Bakersfield. Just Gina, Miriam, and Letitia, the driver who'd been forced into back-to-back long hauls for months. Letitia had a clipboard in her lap, and a new route schedule in hand, one that rotated her off the overnight runs and gave her 2 weekends off every month. She looked across the table. "You went and did all this in a week?" "I didn't do it alone," Bryson said. "But yeah." Gina leaned forward. "You said something your first day here. About not letting people like Cole define the company. I remember. You followed through." Bryson exhaled, leaned back in his chair. "We're not done. But we're not pretending anymore either." The three women sat quietly for a moment, the hum of the vending machine buzzing in the background. Letitia glanced at the new route sheet again. I might actually get to see my niece's recital next month. You will, Bryson said. She folded the paper and tucked it into her bag without another word. When Bryson stepped out into the lot, the sun was setting behind the garages, casting long shadows across the pavement. A bus pulled in from a local route, brakes hissing, engine winding down. The driver stepped off and gave him a nod, not for recognition, just out of habit. He nodded back. No headlines. No cameras. Just a company, finally pointed back in the right direction. And this time, Bryson wasn't watching from a distance. He was right there. Where he needed to be,